So hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Restaurant 365 coaching series webinar, Budgets and Forecasts. We're going to be mastering them in Restaurant 365. I'm Laura Lee Cole, the Customer Marketing Manager here at Restaurant 365, and I'll be guiding you through the first part of our session before handing things over to our expert coach, Molly Grunbeck. We've got a lot of great content lined up today, covering the difference between static budgeting, dynamic forecasting. We're going to share best practices from Restaurant 365 experts like Molly, and showing you how to put it all into action. We'll also have a live demo. We're going to get into the product itself and a chance for you to ask questions. So do stick around until the very end. Before we dive in, just a few quick housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded and we'll send you the link along with any resources mentioned so that you can review at your own pace. The Q&A button at the bottom, use that in Zoom to submit questions at any time. So we'll address as many as possible, maybe during the session as well as during the Q&A portion. Feel free to use the chat to share experiences or tips with other attendees. It's a great way to network during the session. We'll be running a few quick polls to get your input and keep us all engaged. So keep your eye out and participate when they pop up. And as always, if you need anything, drop us a line at marketing@restaurant365.com. All right, so a really high level overview of our agenda, but we're going to be talking about budgeting and forecasting and understanding the key differences and why both matter in the restaurant industry. We'll get some insights from Restaurant 365 experts like Molly to help you avoid costly mistakes with best practices, common pitfalls. We'll talk about supporting reports, like which reports give you the most impact for planning and tracking. Molly's going to jump right into the product and show you exactly how to use the solutions or the features that we have in Restaurant 365 to help you with budgeting and forecasting. And then we'll close with your questions and wrap it up with some final takeaways. And because we're in Q3, this is the perfect time to evaluate year-to-date performance and proactively plan for your upcoming fiscal year. Awesome. I'm excited to introduce today's coach, Molly Grunbeck, Senior Customer Success Manager here at Restaurant 365. Molly has more than a decade of experience in restaurant operations, 3 years in public accounting, and 4 years helping Restaurant 365 customers get the most out of our platform. That combination gives her a deep understanding of both the operational and financial sides of running a restaurant. She specializes in helping our clients streamline planning, improve reporting accuracy, and ultimately make budgeting and forecasting not just easier, but more impactful. Her passion is empowering teams to make confident, data-driven decisions. So here's a fun fact. Molly has traveled to 5 of the 7 continents and will be checking off number 6 this fall. So cool, Molly. Very jelly. And I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura Lee, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, everyone who is on this call today, for joining us. I think we should start off with a poll. Laura Lee, did you have the first poll question? Great. And our question is, have you started budgeting for 2026? Give everyone a few minutes to answer that. I'm always excited to see who is super proactive. And don't worry if you're not, it's still plenty of the year ready to get you there.
All right, good job, guys. We're going to close it out in 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, and we'll share results now.
Okay, well, it looks pretty spread out, but with the majority of not yet, but plan to start soon. And that's kind of what we anticipated here with It's still being quarter three. I believe a lot of people do a lot of budget planning in quarter four, and that's great. Already have it in your mind and ready to get started here for this year.
All right, we should be clear to move on.
Okay. Okay, so a little bit about, and I think this really leads into why we're talking about this topic now for all reasons. Um, Restaurant margins are very thin. Agility is key. So budgeting really helps us get into that long-term vision and control what we set out either, for the year or for quarterly. A lot of people sometimes reassess halfway through the year. And then also kind of speak to how budgeting can really align with forecasting in your system. I think a lot of people tend to intertwine these words, and really they're very different and different how they function in Restaurant 365, but can be really a great combination together. Forecasting really is seen as more of that short-term agility and reactionary based changes what you can empower your operators to use. And also within Restaurant 365, which we'll show a little bit later, how you can actually give them some autonomy to be able to now make adjustments um, from what was done above store level. Budgeting typically is going to remain pretty static throughout the year because that's your goal you were going towards, whereas forecasting is more in line with that kind of that strategic checkpoint and how you're going to be planning out either labor or ordering at the store level to really keep you on target and hopefully meeting and exceeding that budget. Um, Great. Yeah, so let's go over a little bit of the strategic value. Budgets set the destination, the long-term goals. Forecasting keeps you on course with those day-to-day adjustments. With both of these together, we can kind of bridge that long-term with the day-to-day planning. Operational value improves profitability, efficiency, accounting, decision-making. Store level managers, especially with forecasting, if you're using our scheduler within Restaurant 365, can really leverage a lot of the labor metrics that are in there. We have got a great report that we'll talk about a little bit later that has to do with scheduled versus actual reporting. That all has to come down to making sure you're forecasting correctly and aligning things that way. One of the big things here at Restaurant 365 that's great and that really drew me to wanting to work with this company is just that organizational alignment. Having all-in-one database, you're able to have the accounting team communicate directly with the operations team. And I think it really offers some cohesion that's really unique to the restaurant industry. And by having this together, you're able to really align with the goals of the restaurant as a whole. And I mean, just getting rid of a lot of single source of truth documents and different spreadsheets. I can't even begin to tell you how many different sources I had back when I was in the restaurant industry. So I think that's really just some shared visibility that leadership and operators can all be on the same page is one of the biggest benefits of this platform. All right, let's do another poll.
Yeah, so let us know which best describes your current process when it comes to budgets and forecasts. Give everybody a few more seconds to respond. All right, 3, 2.
Great. Okay. So another one that's a little bit spread out. It seems like 22%, we only create an annual budget. I actually thought that would be a little bit higher. So this is pretty cool to see. We create a budget and update quarterly forecasts. That's wonderful as well. We use forecast weekly. Okay, so definitely the lowest there. And hopefully by demonstrating a little bit today, maybe it's that you don't have the weekly forecast feature turned on in your database yet because it is relatively new. Definitely you can reach out to your customer success manager if you haven't already and would like to have the weekly version turned on if that is part of your package. And love to see it. We combine budget with weekly forecasting. That is the majority, and I am all for that. And if you don't have a formal process, this is the perfect time to start. We've got some great resources linked in the Zoom to start you off there. And you can always reach out to your customer success manager if you are in need for some additional assistance. Okay, so just talking a little bit high level about budgeting in Restaurant365, how it may differ from what you used to, or if you have been using it for a couple of years, really just all about those creation sources. You can use the functionality of having those prior year actuals. So what you did with the prior year, especially if you have the POS connected and all of the integrations you've been keeping up with, invoicing, you have your reports from the year before, it makes that budgeting really easy just to go ahead and use those last year's, which we can actually make adjustments to across the board at a percentage level, or you can manually adjust them. You can start off with blank templates. So if you are an accountant that still loves to use Excel to work all of their formulas out, we can actually do that and then import those back in, which is really great. And then also if you just need to tweak maybe a past budget, it's really simple to just go ahead and copy that budget from before, and you can apply those differences that you'd like to do. There's also the ability to have multiple budgets. Now, there can only be one reporting budget, which you'll use for your reports, but you can have multiple budgets in the system where you're able to say, if you did a budget at the beginning of the year, or one, say, for investors or the banks that you had at the beginning of the year, that is your ultimate goal, but maybe that isn't the one that you want to be reporting on day to day. You could actually have a reporting budget, and then you have that budget, which you could just flip that back to the reporting budget to run your reports for maybe at the end of the year or that halfway checkpoint to see where you're at. And then you could go from there and change it back. The nature of it is just definitely it's a fixed framework that it's your goals that you're going towards for that year. The flexibility around it is that it supports either fiscal or operational calendars. You also have the option to do a single location budget or a multi-location budget. And then there's some different ways that you can make those incremental adjustments, which we'll probably see a little bit easier when I show you here in a little bit. Forecasting, as I mentioned, is a lot more dynamic. It's a weekly tool to predict the sales and labor needs based on historical data. Typically we have what's called a smart forecast, which you can have that make adjustments based on the number of weeks you'd like it to look back at the same day of the week. So typically that's set around 8 weeks, but you can adjust that to shorter or longer. 8 is really great because you can also use what the current year is for the 8 weeks, or where there's also a smart forecast that will take into consideration the prior year plus the previous 8 weeks current. So it will be able to identify those trends for you and actually do a little bit of magic, and you'll be able to have that populate directly into the forecast, where your operators can then come in and make adjustments based on, say, if there's different events going on, there's a big sports game in your town, maybe there's a parade going on. all of those things that you can actually account for and make adjustments there. Or say like probably even a more common one being weather. If you have the zip code in your location's address, that will actually show you the weather directly in the forecast, where people who are making these adjustments will be able to dynamically do so based on the weather forecast as well. So if you have a patio and it's going to be a hurricane outside, you definitely can just adjust for that. And then you know from the next year with those tags. So some common pitfalls to avoid with budgeting is creating budgets just without any input from your operators or department heads. I think sometimes we can be very siloed in the accounting or in operations. And by really kind of making it a collaborative effort, you can really hone in the budgets to where they need to go, and make sure that everybody's aligned, especially if you are looking towards, some restaurant groups like to say do a bonus for their store level operators based on budgeting targets. And this is definitely a way to gather their input and have all of those things together. Also overlooking current market variables, like is there an uptick or a downturn within the economy? Are there supplier price changes? I know a big thing on everybody's mind this year are the tariff impacts, right? Is there a food supply chain issue going on? Is there, are eggs out of control or something like that? Like, are those things that we need to possibly account for? Or maybe it's just something simpler, like you're going to be having a new location opening, and there's going to be a lot of resources going there. So maybe we need to allocate some extra labor dollars for some training. Within Restaurant365 specifically, not setting up your fiscal years for all the legal entities beforehand. You can definitely run into some errors there. You need to make sure that the calendars are set up prior to trying to set up the budget. Forecasting wise is skipping the labor matrix configuration. Even if you're not using our scheduler, you want to make sure that you set up the labor matrix so that you can accurately depict the labor forecasting within your reporting tools. Ignoring upcoming events, like I already mentioned, how those would be beneficial in forecasting. And then not regularly monitoring your forecasts. Like this really shouldn't be something that you set it and forget it. Making sure that your team gets in the habit of coming in and checking those forecasts before they're published for the week is a really great jumping off point. Get them in the habit of looking at those as part of their process of closing out the week, or possibly even doing their schedule is a good time period to do it as well. Oh, another poll. I like these.
Yeah, we've got a bunch. So we're going to find out, what is your biggest challenge with budgeting and forecasting today? We talked about some common pitfalls, but maybe yours wasn't even on the list. Got some options: lack of accurate or timely data, misalignment between accounting and operations, those external events Molly just mentioned, market changes, so important. And then obviously monitoring, right? Staying on top and training. All right, let's give you guys 3, 2, 1. Get those answers in. We're going to end it.
Oh, another good one. Okay. So it looks like the majority is saying training store level managers on the process. Okay, I think that's a good one. Maybe when you see the forecasting, for sure, that will just show you just how simple the interface is. We definitely also have some resources in our support center, as well as your customer success manager can direct you to the best resources available if you aren't able to locate them yourself in the knowledge base. But really kind of getting into that process of looking those things over and training your team on those things is something we can definitely help with as a customer success team to make sure you're getting a lot of value out of your software there. Let's see, what was the next one? Misalignment between accounting and operations. I would say that's a pretty big one. And definitely should be a goal for everyone this year to include the operators and accounting both together and a lot more conversation. One of those things that I try to encourage is, even when they're attending calls with me, is having both teams, or at least one member of each team, see what the other one is experiencing. So if it's something that, say, we're talking about inventory also impacts accounting, right? So probably just seeing like a little bit of how that process goes and how it's going to affect the accounting team from those GL postings. So it's not having any disparities between these type of things. Also staying on top of updates throughout the year. Okay. And making event and market changes. All right. So we'll show you a little bit in forecasting how we can do those things. Okay. So best practices about budgets. So uniquely identifying your budget with a name is my number one recommendation because it'll make it so much easier if you're trying to say, copy that budget later on down the road if it has a unique name. So my nomenclature I usually tend to recommend is the year dash the name of the location. Or if it's a legal entity, you're doing a multiple location budget, which for the legal entity, it'll be the year dash the legal entity name. And that just really makes your life easier down the road. Leveraging the Excel integration. If you are an Excel lover and you like to do formulas to try to calculate things out, you can absolutely export, import those budgets back in, makes it super easy to do so. We also have a knowledge base article. If you've ever had trouble with importing things back in, it has common missteps of what could be causing your import to fail. So that's a really great resource. And then also, I think one thing that we're kind of honing in here and kind of seeing that it tends to be an issue across the board is involving both finance and operations in the budgeting process for accuracy and buy-in. And then, thinking strategically, really thinking about budgets and treating it as like where you want to go. That's the target, setting the destination for the year or the period. It shouldn't necessarily be reactionary unless there's a big downturn, say, COVID in 2020 was a very good example of that. Best practices for forecasting, plan ahead, generate and publish those forecasts before the week. You're going to have maximum impact that way. And this is because how it's designed, you cannot update that forecast after the day has passed. So this really helps with accountability of your store level operators to make sure that they're going in and making those adjustments like you asked them to. And you have clear visibility on if something was adjusted or not. Staying configured, keeping that labor matrix, the day parts, and the start of day settings up to date and separated out by location is going to give you the maximum impact there. Just because stores have different levels going on between locations typically. Go beyond history, definitely incorporate events, holidays, sports games, festivals, you name it. Anything that might increase or decrease your sales, you want to account for those things. Because what you'll see with the forecast is that feeds into the ordering module and the scheduling module and your reporting. So if your forecasts are accurate, and they will get more and more accurate over time, the more that your team tends to use them, you will see those benefits down the road. Also adjusting for marketing. So factor in ads or promotions you might be running. Like say, you have a discount coming out, like a back to school night or something like that. Make sure you're factoring that in. That might really increase your sales that you have. And keep it alive. Keep it treating it as an ongoing process, not an all one-time report. And definitely collaborate and train amongst your team members so that they're getting that feedback and realizing if they need to adjust their adjustments. Next poll.
Yeah, I think this is coming back to like, how often do you review your budgets and forecasts?
Mm-hmm.
Got a bunch of different options, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly. Some might be only doing it at year end. All right, I'll give you guys 10 more seconds. 3, 2, and 1. Let's see the results.
Okay, great. So weekly and monthly. That's what I expected mostly from the forecasting side because of monthly is how the platform was set up with a new update. We have the weekly forecasting. So that's really great to see that we're looking at that most often. And then I would expect like on the budget realm, some people are probably doing quarterly reassessments, which is great as well. Okay, so I think we're going to jump in here and go over the database. So if Laura Lee, could you confirm for me you can see the database screen?
I sure can.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so within your database here, you have the budgeting module, which lives in the accounting. So you're going to toggle down to the accounting field, and then you can come over to budgets. But before we get into budgets, what I like to have everyone check is to make sure that their fiscal years are set up. So if you didn't know already, this is my favorite part of the new navigation experience is fiscal years. We can come into them right here. And we can actually see, want to come in and make sure that 2025 is set up. So just going in and looking at an example here for this legal entity, Burgers and Co., we can see that this calendar is set up and combined for fiscal and operational. And that means that both your operational calendar and your fiscal calendar are the same. Now you have the ability in Restaurant365 to have these be different. So if you wanted these to be different, you would just uncheck that and you could come in here and create a different calendar for your operational year, which is pretty common because in the operational side, typically your operators are going to want to see sales data based on the same day of the prior year. So what we would do is say they're running a 13.4, we can change that relatively easy. And then that automatically will update. Oh, I don't want to do that for, for fiscal. I want to change that for operational. So if this starts on the first of the year, it breaks it out into those 13 even periods. So now when I have those set up, I can actually run 2 different calendar types. Or if they're combined and you want them to stay the same, you have the option to keep them the same. It really lets you be able to have the operators really see Saturday as the same day, and that's easier for comparison purposes and aligning inventory at the instead of doing it at the end of the month, which might be on on a Wednesday 1 month, they're actually doing it on the 4th Saturday every month, something like that. So I really love that. So making sure that those are set up, that's a common pitfall because you cannot put a budget in if you don't have a legal entity calendar set up, because this is what drives all of the reporting within Restaurant365. So now if we come back to the accounting module and we go into budgets, and we're just going to kind of do a high level overview. If I wanted to create that budget, I click this create button and I come in here, I can pick the year. I can pick if I want it to be a period or a weekly budget, operational or fiscal. I recommend the operational calendar purely because most of the time accounting will be able to have access to change the budgets, whereas your operators do not, because you can only have that one reporting budget. I typically recommend that to be an operating budget. So with this, you have the ability to also set it up by week. If you set it up by week, this is going to default to operational budget. So that's that operational calendar we talked about before. So if those are separate, that's how you're going to see that separately. And you'll just want to keep this in mind when you're running your reports with the budget. If you're using the reporting, but the metric of financial or operational, you'll want to make sure that if you're running a report with a budget, it's the one that has the reporting budget selected. This is where that naming convention I was speaking about comes into play. So if I wanted to come in here and I would say this is Hamburger Hunters. And if I was going to do a period update, I don't know, 8, something like that. This is the indicator of the reporting budget. Clicking this is what will allow it. And you will get this warning if there is already a reporting budget for this calendar. It will let you know. So, okay, yes, I want to select this one instead. And you can flip them back and forth with relatively easily. And then this is where you can start. You can either start with those prior year actuals, you can copy another budget, and this is where I'm mentioning this makes your life a lot easier if you can come in here and you know which one that is. Because if you just name them the year, you have no idea which location these are. Whereas if I have it named Hamburger Ops, I remember what that was for 2025. Also, okay, so if we come in here and we select Hamburger Ops, we can elect to increase, decrease, or none for every account. Now, typically for a financial budget, if you have something like depreciation in there, you're not necessarily going to want to increase or decrease every single account. But if it makes it easier for you, you absolutely can come in here and do that and say, I want to increase or decrease everything by 10%. You can go ahead and create that budget. Which you will see here will break it out by those quarters. I must have copied a $0 budget, but regardless, that's okay. You also have the ability to uncheck and check the reporting budget here. You're able to lock the budget once it's done. A couple of things that I was talking about, if you needed to, if you prefer to do your budget in Excel with formulas and import that back in, you can easily export the budget template here. You would just select here which location you want to export that for. If there's calculations involved and you want that number exported, click that and go ahead and export that directly to Excel, make your changes, and then import it back in. So here's where you can make those changes. Save that and then import that directly back in. I mean, if we had more time, I would show you how to do that. But in a nutshell, that's the easiest way to start the budget there. Then also, if you wanted to say, change something across the board, let's start a budget with actual numbers in here. I think it'll make it easier to see what we're talking about. We'll start with prior year actuals from this year, and we'll increase it by 3%. Okay, so with the budget as, there's a couple different ways how these could come in. If they're set already on the GL account, and I will show you actually quickly where that it lives. If you go into a GL account here, there is on the budget defaults tab, the default is going to be budget as amount. But say you want this to be percent based up of the account, the GL account, or the operational category, you can absolutely set that here so that it's already done for you when you go into the budgeting screen. So if you want that to be a calculated field already, that's where you can go in and have that done. All right, so back to what we were talking about. You can also come in here and notice how this is a percent of sales, but this is an amount. If we wanted, say, I don't know, just for an example, if we click into the amount here, you can update that based on the budget as in the same fashion that you could directly on the GL account with the defaults. So you could do the percentage of the account type, the GL type, or the operational category. You can also update amounts. You can increase and decrease them by a percentage. And all of these calculated fields are relatively easy to update within the system itself, if you're not an Excel person. This also, when you hover over here, will show you the last person that made those changes and the date that those changes were made. So in a nutshell, this is budgeting. The one last thing I want to talk about, high-level overview for budgeting, is a report that I like to use. When I go in and make these budgets, if kind of seeing them on the screen doesn't really give me a good visual of how that's going to look in my P&L. So what I'll do is come in here, and there's actually a P&L report that is budget only, which you can set this up in custom financial reporting as well. But say I wanted to see locations side by side, budget only, in the details for all locations. Well, that's going to probably take a minute to do for this database, but if we're going to see it by location and we want to see Hamburger Hunters as of Q4 2025, we're going to run this. I have my budget in there. Let's do 2024. Oh, it's because I have that's where that operational came in. So this is where we're talking about, make sure that operational is checked. I probably needed a better version. we'll let that load. That might take a moment, but there's a lot of information in this database. Okay, so moving on from there, I guess, do we have any questions in the chat about budgets, Lauralee, that we want to go over before we move on to forecasting?
We could cover a couple of questions. We've got some in here that are probably a little bit more detailed.
Okay.
But there's one, I'm going to kind of combine them. We've got some fiscal year questions. People have been creating a budget, doing it by calendar months, but they want them offset from January to December. So their fiscal year is October through September.
Mm-hmm.
And while they can set up the budget using a custom year, it limits other functions in Restaurant 365, like asset tracking. So is there
Yes.
any?
So with fixed assets module specifically, if you're utilizing that, you cannot use custom calendars. You need to use one of the calendars that are designated. So if you have a fiscal year that starts on a different date, the best bet is to go through and see which, instead of using custom periods, see if you can make any of these other versions work with the start date being in October. So what I mean by that is, say if I did a 13/4 but my calendar wants to start in October, finding something that works this way is probably going to be your best scenario, because as long as it's one of these versions, the fixed asset module will still work. Custom periods, it will not work with that. And that just has to do with the calculations that the system has on the back end. Definitely happy to explore that specific scenario offline further, either with support or your customer success manager can help you. Good question, though. Okay, so I think because we're already coming up at the 45-minute mark, we'll kind of dive in a little bit about forecasting here, so then we can kind of get to some questions here at the end. So for forecasting, we have the new forecasting experience, which is the weekly version. Okay, that's not cool. That worked this morning. I'm gonna log out of this and log back in. Okay, great. So we'll hide that. So now how this looks a little bit different than what it used to be. It defaults now to the next week that's available, because as best practice, you should be doing your forecasting the week before. Above store level, they can come in and actually set up the forecast metrics that they would like to do in the configurations. So there'll be a default version that lives there. You have the ability to decide if you want to forecast based on gross sales, net sales, and most recently we added entree forecasting. This is a little bit about what I was talking about with those projection weeks that you can change. The default will be 8 weeks, and that's what's recommended. And this is what falls into the smart forecast of 2025, which would be the current year of the 8 weeks prior in the current year. And then you also have the smart forecast, which is the prior year. So you'd have the 2024 trends in line with the smart forecast of the 8 weeks prior as well. You can also give them the option to only use prior year, only use prior week actual. There's a couple different ones. And then also what the default is. So once you have that available, you can actually come in here and set up your forecast directly. And you actually have the view to make those adjustments here. This is a little bit about what we're talking about with those adjustments from your sales forecasting. So you can see a little bit here how our lovely store level operator came in here and they're like, okay, I can see that it's raining on this date. So we're going to have to close the patio. We'll probably be down in sales by $1,000. And what's great about the forecasting is that those projected net sales will always live here, but you can see your differences in those adjustments, which can be made by a percentage adjustment or by a dollar amount. So if I wanted to say increase my sales by 10%, or that did dollars, if I want to do 10%, we'll see that in blue. If I want to do a negative 10%, we'll see that, or I did dollars again. It'll do that in red. And those are just how easy it is to make those adjustments. So really empowering your operators to be able to come in and make those changes. Here's also where they can tag those events, right? Say there's a parade that's coming up. And maybe it is a local event, right? We can actually pretty easily come in and set those up on the days that they will be occurring. You could also utilize this for, say, a big catering event or something like that you have. And so if you want to put these tags that can then communicate in other areas as well. So I'm sure if we have a parade, maybe this is just something going on. We think there's going to be less sales, there's going to be less walk-in traffic because the roads are closed or something like that. Here also, so you'll see your sales adjustments, and then you have your labor forecasting. Now, it's very important to make sure that you do set that labor matrix up that we mentioned before, so that your labor can be projected here. So now that I have this, I can actually go up, and what I need to do is republish any edits that I made so that it can go and feed into the rest of the system. So am I sure that I want to republish my forecast? Yes, I'm sure I made those adjustments. And now once that's republished, that will update your reports, the scheduler if you're using that, and then also suggested ordering if you're using the purchase ordering module. And it actually allows for the user to go directly there if they wanted to. So let's go. So we don't want to get too much into scheduling, so we'll just kind of talk a little bit more about forecasting. Some of the really great reports that forecasting will flow into, we have a forecast report, we have a daily labor review, the operations dashboard and the labor dashboards are both really great tools for operators. And those dashboards live here. So we have the operational dashboard. Where we can see yesterday's information as well as the labor dashboard. So pretty simple and very intuitive, I think, forecasting wise. The biggest thing would be just training your users to come in here, your store level operators, whoever would be responsible for this, to come in and making sure that they are updating their forecast as necessary. So say they wanted to change their projection, they can do that up here using that pencil. If they want to use the smart forecast, this is where it shows which ones are available to them, those defaults that we set up earlier. Here's where they can actually choose how they want to forecast. So if you only want them to be able to forecast one way, then limit it to only the one way. Same with if you want them to be able to do net or gross sales, and you can have them recalculate this. Okay, so that is a very high level overview of forecasting. We do have a lot of great resources around this new tool. So if you're interested in learning more about forecasting, definitely reach out to support if you have any questions and you're already using it, or reach out to your customer success manager who can kind of get you on the right path of using this really incredible tool. Was there another poll, Lauralee?
There is. We're going to launch just to get to know. I know we've extended, and I love the fact that we've jumped into product. Sorry, guys, that we had a few little hiccups in there. Um, just goes with having a live webinar, but we wanted to show you, allow Molly the time to show you like how to actually use the features and share some of her favorite reports with you. But let us know, like, how confident do you feel? More confident now that you've seen it in action using Restaurant 365 for budgets and forecast needs? Very, somewhat, not. Maybe you need to reevaluate your whole process. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I'll give you guys 3 more seconds. Get those answers in. All right. You want to share results? Hopefully we can get to some of these questions, but we are coming close. And we also want to share, make sure that you guys click on the resources button. We've got some links in there. We've got a budgets overview, forecast overview from the knowledge base, as well as how to troubleshoot those import issues that you saw Molly have one, right? So there are some good tips and tricks on how to overcome any of the challenges you might face when importing as well. So somewhat confident. That's awesome. Need more practice. Molly, what
Great.
if people aren't feeling confident?
If you're not feeling confident, I would definitely recommend reaching out to your customer success manager. If you don't know who that is, put in a support ticket in the support center and they can direct you there to that person or the digital success team who will definitely point you in the right direction. Also, if you are utilizing one of our service partners, they're a really great resource for a lot of this tool as well.
Very cool. So let's try to get to a couple questions at least. Let's see what we've got here. I know we talked a little bit about um, some of the things live, right?
Mhm.
I want to say, so the Excel integration, it said didn't work well for a few years, and where it wasn't bringing in the percentage for a number, just flat numbers. So has this been fixed?
Um, I'm not aware of the issue that they're speaking about
I think with the
specifically,
upload,
so
yeah.
we'd probably need to follow up
Okay.
with on that one.
Yeah. So please do follow up with your customer success manager or reach out to support if you think it's more of a data issue. Um, we can always get you that kind of help. Let me see here. There are lots of questions similar to that about uploads, like how many budgets can you import at one time?
How many can you import at one time? If you're doing a single location budget, it would be the one. It's typically by location that you'd want to import that. Otherwise, you can run into um, some unnecessary errors. I would
Right.
caution to do a lot at once. I know that there's an ask around um, some of these enhancements I think that some people are mentioning. So I really want to call out our idea portal as a really great place to put any ideas that you have to make the budgeting feature better or a little bit easier in the way that you would want it to work, or ideally. Those are also things that you can have a conversation with your customer success manager. We have the ability to go in and upvote those on your behalf, but it always is better because those ideas coming directly from our customer base to our product managers are what they'd like to see, because you can truly tell them how it's impacting you in that way.
Awesome. And we do have that as part of the resources. So if you click on that button, you should have the idea portal link. You've got the budgets overview, the forecast overview, the import issues. Do bookmark those, especially as you're coming into the season where many of you said you're just starting to get your hands around that budgeting and forecasting. So we also have, for those attending live today, a special discount. If you want to click into those resources, there's a link talking about restaurant transformation tour that is coming up next month, September 21st through the 23rd in San Diego. So we're super excited to share that with you. Could we advance to that slide? Just I want to make sure that you guys have what you need if you want to use the QR code, but definitely grab that resource in the resources, the promo code that we have for live attendees. You'll get a nice discount. We've added a whole fundamentals track of learning. So if you want to learn more about budgets, that's going to be available. We're going to dive deep into like daily, weekly, and monthly workflows. And so we're going to have a lot of our Restaurant 365 experts on hand to walk you through and get you more confident, not just in budgets and forecasts, but in all of the features and functions of the platform. And anything you want to say, Molly, just kind of wrap it up. Thank people for attending.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for attending. I'll try to go through the questions
Yeah.
thoroughly afterward and follow up with anyone that put them in there. I definitely recommend reaching out to us to allow us to kind of help you if you are struggling. And Laura Lee, I really appreciate you putting this together and giving me the opportunity to speak to everybody today.
No, absolutely. Yeah, we'll go through those questions. We'll try to get them out to everyone. So even if your question wasn't answered, or we're going to get the other questions answered, and might been something you didn't think about asking, but had that in the back of your mind too. So we'll get that to you guys as a follow up. Thank you for the suggestion. Those of you who want to see the polls as well as a follow up, and maybe we'll come up with a few more fun resources for those of you who attended live today. Thank you so much, Molly, for your expertise and just your time. The video will come. Thank you, Larry, for punching that in at the last minute. Typically within 1 to 2 business days. So give us a little bit of time. We want to clean it up a little bit for you and get it out to everyone who registered. Thanks again for attending. I really do hope to see you in San Diego. It's going to be a huge customer event focused entirely on you. And we're going to be announcing our Customer Excellence Awards winner. Our finalists will be attending, sharing their stories, and you'll get to find out who is our ultimate winner live at San Diego. So hope to see you there, guys.